Hey guys, this will be video 3 for the how to design build a Les Paul custom replacement neck, and sometimes using Stuart McDonald templates. And I'm going to, in the first 5 to 10 minutes of this video, I'm just going to talk about things in reference to the ad, the listing, because I didn't realize it, but once you receive a bid on an auction, they don't allow you to update the description. Now, they allow you to upload more pictures, which is what I've been doing, but I wasn't able to explain why I uploaded these pictures showing this neck right here. So let me get this out of the way first, and then I'll direct you to, I better go ahead and do this. If you want to really know how to build this thing, I would have to do about 7 to 8 videos, but I've already done them for this exact neck. If you go to my video series called Building a 50s Burst or Black Beauty per Stuart McDonald templates or possibly StuMac templates, it's about 11 to 12 months ago, I built a 1955 spot-on Les Paul custom replica that I did not provide any headstock overlay, no logo. I've told the guy I don't do that type of stuff, but he agreed that, he had someone that would do all of his own overlay. I don't even know what they did with it. I never saw the pictures. So if you go to my video series and if you go to video 3, you'll see that about 15 to 20 minutes, about 20 minutes in is when I explain we're going to build this neck on camera for the next 5 or 6 videos while we are waiting for these templates to come in, and while we're waiting for all the Honduran mahogany to come in and all that jazz. So if you want to see this neck actually materialize, that's where it took place. But the reason I had this on the table when I was showing in the new listing is I took a whole bunch of pictures showing this profile from every angle, basically, like that. And then I think I turned it around. And then I even showed it with the possibility of doing a stinger on the back. The reason I did that was I just wanted you to see the difference between a 1.5-inch tenon and a 1.25-inch tenon, so that if you're building your custom guitar, there's positively nothing wrong with working with that right there. But if you're fitting this into an existing body that you have, that's what I kept explaining in all my past videos. Hey, I don't, and even in the listing, I don't have a problem gluing the original material back on here. I'll either Titebond glue it on, or I will epoxy glue it on, or if you prefer, I can machine use some Honduran mahogany. And, in other words, I'll work with you. So just whomever wins it, just understand that I'm cool to help you out with that. But I just wanted you to see that in the listings. So on that note, the fact that I still have this on the table, let me check the time. But what I'm going to do, we're going to do a weight comparative between the Honduran mahogany and the maple. And you're going to be pleasantly surprised to realize that when you do not go with heavily figured wood, you go with a more bland wood. It's very light. It's very airy. So keep that in the back of your mind if you're getting ready to build a guitar that's got this heavily figured maple, and then you're going to put a ebony, Gabon ebony fretboard on there that's massively thick and all that stuff, and some Grover Imperial tuners. Next thing you know, you're gonna have a heavy guitar. Okay, so let me check the time. 3 minutes, 50 seconds, kind of a world record for me. So did I cover that enough? Building a 50s burst or Black Beauty is where that neck materializes. Starts around video 3. 20 minutes in, and then goes probably for 5 or 6 days. And I go into excruciating detail about how I take a concept and or a replacement neck that is per very specific dimensions, and put it on paper, or just order the template from StuMac, and then take that paper and then turn it into a little piece of wood, so that I can start assessing, just how thin might this stuff get when I'm roughing it out. And then I can take those pieces of material to Woodcraft, or which I love going to Woodcraft, because the primary reason I love buying wood from Woodcraft, every bit of their wood is in a controlled environment. And they'll get wood in from a vendor it is already kiln dried, KILN dried, but then it sits in their air-conditioned showroom for, I don't know, a few days, a week or two, sometimes a month before it sells. So you're buying wood off the shelf that is in a controlled environment day and night. The AC is on, so it's extremely stable wood. And you can take this paper in there and you can lay it on a board and ascertain how many necks you might get out of a board based on what the square board footage price is. Okay, so let me get back on point. But I cover all that stuff in unbelievable detail in the video series that I just told you about. So what I'm going to do is, I think I covered that enough about why those pictures show that neck in the listing. But in this video series, I'm also, or in this actual video today, I'm even going to spend a little bit of time talking about Les Paul custom binding. And not just Les Paul custom. This is pretty much a jazz guitar. And that's why you'll hear me say it's per jazz guitar specs. What I mean by that is typically from the finish line back, a jazz guitar is always going to have multi-piece binding, and typically 5-piece binding, 7-piece binding. It's just off the charts. And that's exactly what the Les Paul Custom is. It's a binding heavy guitar, okay? And sometimes it's a bit of a nightmare. But I'm going to talk a little bit about overcoming the fear and then how to do your binding. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pause and get cleaned off a little bit, or maybe get organized. Then I'm going to get the a scale set up, and we're going to talk about weight analysis between a maple and Honduran mahogany. Okay, probably one of the most important parts of building a guitar, and I'm really serious, it's about keeping the weight of the guitar under control. And the fact that we're building this replica, or we're replacing this neck in an existing guitar. And I'm just going to approach this video from that standpoint, that you're either building a custom guitar that's your own personal guitar based on that footprint. And we know that that footprint is always heavy, especially if it's a solid guitar. So one might be thinking, and if you've heard any horror stories, if you go online, it's like, oh man, the maple necks are heavy, heavy, heavy. That's not true. Sometimes the maple necks are even lighter than the Honduran mahogany or the mahogany, especially if it's certain types of mahogany or heavily figured mahogany. And I may have already mentioned it in the introduction, but the beautiful thing about going with more of a bland, clear maple that doesn't have real heavy figure, it's much, much lighter. And when I say much lighter, you're about to see just how similar it is to this is clear Honduran mahogany, which is extremely light. Now, I think this would be an unfair comparison if this Honduran mahogany was insanely figured and, all that jazz, and or if it had a different truss rod in it, or et cetera, et cetera. So I think this is a very fair comparison as to what you would be able to build, or what type of weight you would be adding to the guitar that you have. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. We're going to start with this neck, and I'm going to weigh it in, I'll weigh it in grams first. And I'm sorry, I got to talk about what's in front of us. I don't have a 50s Les Paul Custom in Honduran mahogany unless it's connected to a body. So this is as close as I can get, but I think it's a fairly fair analysis, because where there might be mass here, there is no mass here, but where there is mass here, there is no mass here. And it's, if anything, this is a little bit taller. Anyone can look at that and go, well, that's headstock's probably going to be heavier. Yeah, that's true. But this one's ever so slightly longer. So this one would probably be heavier at the headstock, but all of them will be, whether it's maple or mahogany. So anyway, I think it's a fair comparison. Also, the truss rods are identical. See where this fillet, let me take it to that. See where the fillets stop. No, the truss rod in the Flying V, I may be wrong. No, they're identical. 16 3/4. Okay, so Same profile, 1 inch radius, 1 inch radius. The nut width, you remember on this one's 1 3/4. That one's already 1/11/16. So as close as I can get. Turn on the scale. I'm going to start in grams first. 490 grams. 633 grams. 1.080 pounds. I'm sorry, let me back up. Just let me clear. I apologize. I think I was on ounces. Here, sorry about that. So this is grams. 490 grams, which I already did. 1,080. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. 1.080 pounds. 1.396 pounds. And because I effed up the whole thing, I'm gonna start over. So grams, 490 grams, 633 grams. 1.082 pounds. 1.396 pounds. Okay, how much weight is going to be coming off this neck? This tenon will be getting cut off probably at least about 1/2 inch. It'll be getting notched out a substantial amount in order to receive the pickup. It will be getting about 1/8 inch cut off the bottom of that in order for it to marry up to an actual 50s custom. I hope that's showing up. I'm going to get as close to the camera as I can. So there'll be a substantial amount of material coming off the bottom of that heel, and then this thickness right here is fairly close, but it's about 1/8 inch that'll be coming off that. And you might be thinking, well, that's not much, but would you be surprised when you take that off and you take that off, and then you come up here and drill all the tuner locations? See, this one has the tuner locations drilled out. And the fact that the maple is a little bit heavier than the Honduran, when you remove the same area or volume, I guess would actually be more accurate, when you move the same volume of material from a heavy wood or a heavier wood, well, then the results are more to your favor, if that makes sense. If you got like a feather-light balsa, it's just super light, and you cut off 1/8 inch, well, you barely even notice it. But if you cut off 1/8 inch of maple here and 1/4 inch here and drill 4 holes, man, you'd be shocked. You'll carve off that 1.3 something pounds down to 1.2. Now you're just 100 ounces different or something like that. So I say all that to say this: when I'm sitting here holding these two necks, I close my eyes, I can feel the weight. There's a little bit more right here, but it's not substantial. Okay, so I don't know how else to give you some sort of analysis of that, other than the fact that I've been building guitars a long time, and when I was building jazz guitars per Robert Benedetto's specs, everything was about getting that guitar as light as possible. And I'm working with a big hollow body guitar. Even though that body's big, it only weighs like 3.5 pounds or 3.8 pounds or 4 pounds maybe. And then you put a neck on it, and the only thing that saved it from being a headstock diving guitar is because the necks on the big body jazz guitars mount at the body at the 14th fret, which is about right here. I think if they mounted at the 16th fret, they probably would start headstock diving. Okay, so I've built a lot of guitars where that was very critical, that this headstock didn't get too big and all that jazz. Okay, so I'm going to pause, get organized, and think about how I want to transition into talking about the rest of the project. So be right back. Also, I forgot to mention, if you go with the Vulcan fiber overlay, obviously it will add a little bit of weight, but then in that event, once you add that, I think I did a little bit of research, went on their website, and I think they said they were like 2.7 millimeter thick, give or take. But and this piece of material right here is 3 millimeter. So basically, all I did was assessed. Um, I put that up there at 3 millimeter, and I measured down 9/16 of an inch here, and just ever so slightly under 5/8 of an inch right there. So you'd be taking a lot of maple off right there. That's a lot of weight. And I say you would, I would be doing that. And I'm so sorry. I made a mistake in the last video where I said you'll need to do that. When whomever wins this guitar, if they say, yeah, I'm going with a Vulcan fiber, then I'll kick into high gear and I'll set up my jigs to machine this off for you according to that taper right there. If you prefer me to leave it alone, hey man, that's all the better. That's awesome, because I got stuff I need to do. But nonetheless, if if you've never done this before, I would really prefer you let me do it, because I know how to transition from here and start feathering this over to this point right here. Okay, that's very important that you understand that, because the last thing you want to do is machine way the hell up in here and get too thin. First off, it would look ridiculous, and it would be structurally you'd be getting dangerously close to the bottom edge. That was a whole concept of the first video. So I really feel better if you let me do this work. And most of you guys out there are probably going, absolutely, buddy, you knock it over the fence, because anything I don't have to do in house, all the better. That should make perfect sense. I'm not going to have to draw it on this side, but there'd be a substantial amount of weight right there that would come out of this neck. Now we're getting closer to the Honduran. And rather than just, guessing at these things, let me just put this up here and show you dimensionally what would be coming out. Doesn't have to come out, because again, see, you might be building a guitar that's all custom, and you might want that tenon to be super super tall, or as tall as possible. And what I'm doing, I'm just going to put this up here and make that mark right there, and this mark over here, and then I'm going to come across here. My dad used to always make the statement. He said, if you draw more than one line, which one are you going to cut? In other words, if you got a pencil, just draw one line. And I told him I was probably 10 years old. I was like, the darkest one. So it was kind of, he laughed. He thought that was funny. Dad was a welding instructor at the local vocational school. You either loved him or you hated him, and most people loved him. He's a great guy. But that's an enormous amount of wood, okay? And it also makes the heel profile get a little bit fatter. So there's a possibility that if you said, hey man, absolutely cut that thing down to the StewMac 50s profile, I probably would be, well, I know I would be doing it on camera, and I would be revealing to you the new heel, because the new heel would get considerably deeper, and you would probably say, oh man, that looks like crap, if I didn't beat you to it. And what that would mean, that this would I'd probably want to come in here and move that down a little bit and give you that profile right there. But as far as I'm concerned, I think this is a mistake. That's a little bit chintzy. It's a little bit thin, so I wouldn't recommend going that close. But there's no sense in this thing being, 7/8 of an inch. Okay. But if someone was building a taller body guitar and this heel is coming down further, which is exactly what this is right here. See, this is designed for a flying V, but it's a hollow body flying V that I designed a long time ago, and it's got an enormous body. Well, it was, but I cut it down to 2 inches. So actually, a lot of this is even going to get cut off. They'll probably a quarter of an inch of this is going to get cut off. But if I'm buying a neck to build a custom guitar, as I mentioned in the last video, I don't want you touching that because I'll cut that to wherever I want because I might change my mind and go with a different body. Okay, so a lot of detailed information there, but I think it's critically important that I kind of go off the cuff and go off the rails even to talk about some of that stuff in pretty extensive detail. All right, so there's a ton of weight there that could come off of that little neck. And let me pause, get organized, and then we'll move forward. Okay, I'm going to spend about 10 minutes talking about hybrids. And I actually paused about 15 minutes, and I really thought about whether I should even introduce this because this is a world in its own right. But nonetheless, I think this is a great opportunity to present that because what we have sitting in front of us here is exactly what we think it is, but it could be pretty much anything you want because the primary a constant that we have in front of us is a neck that is a 24.75-inch scale. A headstock can be changed. I've already covered that. We can't shorten it. We can't extend the length. We can't turn it into an SG or a flying V or a 335. But that's why I had mentioned the whole Gretsch type possibility. So I'm going to spend about 10 minutes talking about the possibility of thinking along the lines of let's get out of the solid body box for a moment and let's go into like let's, with all due respect, let's keep it in the realm of like the world of Gibson designs, and let's think along the lines of like a 335. We all know that the 335 has the tone bars that run down the middle of the body, and then they go down to the tail and they connect into a block. However wide that whole platform is, it is what it is, and it could be widened by adding that material back in, because what's up under the 3-ply arch top plate that might be glued down to this, like a Gretsch Duojet or Silverjet, and a mahogany back and sides. Well, these bars could be, internally glued in and aligned per that right there, which I can guarantee. Make sure that doesn't slide off the table. Okay, so if it won't fall off right there, it shouldn't fall off right there. But nonetheless, I'm not going to give it the benefit of the doubt. So by gluing and clamping those together, not that that's how you would do it, but that should allow you a continual straight line all the way down to your tail block, and that should define a traditional size guitar, whatever size body you went with. And I'm going to stop because I think I presented enough information right there just to let you know, oh wow, hadn't really thought about that. But that's since it does not have this fretboard glued down. If that was glued down, then I would say we're pretty limited to what this is. But if it had trapezoid, inlays, well, it wouldn't look right to paint it black and put 7-ply binding on it because that would be a burst. This is a custom. But the cool thing about the square the block inlays, that's also a 1956 Gretsch, because I owned what year was my Gretsch? 55, 50, yeah. I had a 1956 Gretsch Silverjet, authentic, extremely early serial number. It had the rectangular block inlays. Now, they were not mother of pearl, but nonetheless, if you had this fretboard on there, it would be very safe to turn that into the Silverjet 1956 headstock, which is extremely narrow. And that's what I meant by I know what we see here is what's in front of us, but that's what I meant by, this is really a platform that you could take in numerous directions. Okay. So, and the reason I have those pickups on there is because if you were to do the tone bar configuration, that's where, and this is like a 1961 Filtertron. I have a pair of these, and they're gold. So these are so unbelievably rare, and these will be going in my conversion, my 6120 conversion. But you would be able to put, and it even has the original screws, which is how rare that is that. But these original screws would go right down into that tone bar there and there, and your pickups, it would basically be right there. Okay. And that's what I'm saying. This thing is so close to turning into pretty much whatever you wanted to build. So you got your, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the internal workings of a Silverjet. I'm going to hold that just to be safe. But then the bridge pickup would be back here. If it is it too narrow, well, big deal. Just open them up a little bit. That's what I meant by this thing is such an incredible platform to take in almost unlimited directions. Well, not unlimited, but you know what I mean. In a lot of different directions than just a solid body guitar. So I'm going to get that over there so it doesn't get damaged. Or you could go back to the world of the 335, and if you were to open those up a little bit, you could even you could design it however you want it on the inside so that even your traditional, I got that in backwards, stuff like that drives me crazy. If that were the bridge location, you would route up into that right there for the most part. They'd be in a little bit closer, but I think you guys get my drift. In other words, it would be a semi-hollow body, or it would have the tone bars and all that jazz down the middle. And I'm going to get this off the table. And the reason I've always had this over there on the table saw in the background is just to show you when you're really really thinking out of the box. See how your binding could come around, and that's where a nice jazz guitar. Well, I guess I was wrong. Oh no, no. See, it's going to drop down in the body about a quarter of an inch, and then that will get machined off exactly like how you see, so that you see the binding from the end, and it's really beautiful. And then it'll get a little cap right here, probably ebony, and then, but nonetheless, the Honduran is really beautiful as well. So when you start thinking along these lines of let's get way out of the box, you realize that it doesn't have to be a solid body guitar. It can be a hollow. This is more like a heavily chambered guitar, even though it has the Flying V platform. This is more along the lines of the way a Gretsch Silverjet would think, and unbelievable, just piercing tones. So talked about that enough. Let me pause and get organized and get some of this crap off the table, because I just wanted to present that enough to let you know you can go in a lot of different directions. So let me pause and get organized, and then we'll close it out. Okay, I'm going to transition back into talking about a Les Paul Custom. But one thing that's very important, I forgot to do this earlier. When you're fooling around with the pencil like that, make sure you go ahead and erase it, because if you don't, what will happen, you'll start handling it, and the oils in your hand will kind of seal that pencil mark into the wood, and whomever gets this neck, they might decide to stain it. When I say stain, meaning like a trans tint, or they might elect to clear coat it, and they might actually like a real white, clear maple, and it would be a shame if you didn't get this off, because it might make their job near impossible to achieve a really beautiful finish. And I'm really serious about. There's a part of me that's like, in the right hands, you could bring this neck alive, and with stain and clear coat. Intense is what I'm saying. Like if you were doing a blue guitar, and you fogged in some blue down here, and then this was all amber, and just really stunning, because that rosewood would really come alive. So getting back to a Les Paul Custom replacement neck, I've shown you enough information there about what could be removed in order to lighten up the neck and get it under control. But and then the next thing, follow up with a little bit of 220, and I'll do this after I get off the camera and kind of clean it up a little bit. The good thing about this headstock, it's about probably a half a millimeter larger than is necessary for the actual overlay that I had mentioned. But please make sure you do your own research about that overlay, because I did go online and I saw where they mentioned some of the dimensions, and the overlay that we received, it was actually a little bit longer. So, just, as I always say, proceed with caution. But they might be really conservative in some of their dimensions just to make certain that nobody gets in trouble. So let me pause again and get cleaned up, and then we'll finish up talking about binding a little bit, talk about some of the binding, and then we'll talk about some of that general layout, and I will be referring back to that video series that I mentioned earlier on. Okay, I got that cleaned up. I spent about 10 minutes doing a little bit of sanding off camera just to make certain that I didn't forget even what I had mentioned and start handling it and make a mistake. And it prompted me to realize, show you a trick here. This was when I first started. This was always difficult maintaining a very consistent arc here, and I found that by using a small stainless steel measuring device, like some sort of little ruler. Now this sandpaper would need to be the full length, but this works so well to help you maintain a real clean sanding. And I would have this neck, in my carpenter's vise. My vise would be down there. And then I'd have a board hanging off the counter that would be resting on. And then I would be coming in like this right here and doing some real controlled cutting, and then looking at the pencil lines and stuff like that. And that's a great way about connecting A to B and not getting any ripple, because you want to keep them very much compound. It's a very compound. There's nothing about that is not compound. It changes throughout the whole arc, and that's what makes it so beautiful. So I may have mentioned it in the early. I don't think I did, but I just made this little stinger. Try to get it centered here, and that's actually Mercruiser Black, because I used to build marine engines down in South Florida, which I so miss South Florida, but nonetheless, that is Mercruiser Black. So that's why it's so blotchy and shiny. I ran out of my flat black, but in the event you did come in and do stain work, that's roughly. Let me just stop moving around like an idiot and just show you, so that you can take a visual for yourself. And if I forget, that's basically a 4-inch radius. It's really 3 15/16, but just keep that in the back of your mind. See, it's still wet. I just sprayed it a little while ago. So really beautiful. And that, what that is, they used to always do that on the old jazz guitars, because they had the big headstock. And even though it had the tuners up there that had the large bass, and it covered a lot of the sends, sometimes those pieces, and I say sometimes, 99% of the time, those didn't match very well, and they were so off as far as coloration, primarily because this is on a pitch and these were cut out on the flat. I'm not going to go there, but they were just trying to cover things, and the Stinger was a beautiful way of hiding all those these are called ears when you glue on to make the big jazz headstock, which they were enormous. I mean, some of them were another inch long and way too much headstock, but it is what it is, or it was what it was. But that would be your Stinger. It's beautiful. And if you're good with your nitro, I did a very good job matching these. So as I was gluing them up, I was thinking along the lines of, building a jazz guitar. So they'll stand out. Again, the way you would do it, all this would be clear, and you would see that. And then obviously this is all clear. In other words, all the clear carries down. And then typically what happens by the time you get about in this area right here, it starts kind of fogging out where they do the burst effect. And usually the burst was not necessarily to make things look pretty; it was to hide some sort of imperfection. Like there's a little bit of discoloration right there in that wood. You might come up here and spray it a little bit darker and just kind of give it some character. But in all actuality, or you might spray this a little bit darker and leave that light, things like that. You guys that know what you're doing, you're probably much, much better at that than I am. Okay. So, uh, no sense in talking about the Stinger anymore. I probably spent too much time talking about it anyway. But I did want to get you that 3 and 15/16 radius in the vent. You did that. Let me check the time. 36 minutes. It's not too terribly bad because this is an action-packed video. Binding. Multi-piece binding. Should you try to do your own binding, or should you just order the overlay? And I've already covered the fact that you can't just route down into this headstock. That should make perfect sense. But there's nothing wrong with you making your own overlay. And you can make your own overlay for pieces of material that is laying around your shop. And then you would be doing your own mother of pearl work regardless of what you're putting there, whether it's your name, your logo, it's your project, it's your guitar. But and if you're able to do that type stuff, then you already know probably how to work with your binding. But for this particular guitar right here, if you're using this, or this neck, if you're using it to replace your Les Paul Custom, which is damaged, then you're either going to be having some produce that for you, or you're going to be doing it yourself. And all I can say is if you go on StewMac.com, they have some incredible videos that clarify to you the products you should use. And one would be like their Bindall cement, the cement glue that they use. It's about $30. Each one of these is going to cost you about $5 to $7. And this is a 5-ply. Okay, so 50 plus 30, we're already at $80 just for the glue and the binding. And then we're going to need the overlay, whether it's material laying around our shop that we're going to have to paint black eventually. And then there's the mother of pearl. So $10 here, $30 here, $50 there. And you're probably looking at $150 just in your material, like your mother of pearl. And I'm not talking about that exact overlay. That's why I kept clarifying. I would strongly recommend just going with the one I mentioned in the early the part of the video series from Germany, Crazy Parts, I believe it's called, and then just glue it straight down. If you're doing a replacement neck, I don't want to be a part of anything that's not above board, and I'll just stop at that because once this guitar neck leaves my shop, you could turn it into a silver jet, like I said earlier, or you could turn it into whatever, sky's the limit. But binding is fairly expensive, but man, once you get really good at doing binding, that's really, believe it or not, what defines a really high-end guitar builder is their ability to do the high-end binding work. So, and I'm sure there's a ton of videos out there about what's the best route to take, but I have found that a combination of acetone and a little stainless steel container with a little bit of the Stuart McDonald Bindall cement, and then I'll drop a little dab of that cement on a little piece of paper, dip a little brush in that, then dip it in the acetone, and then I don't do it on the body. I would do it on a jig. Let's say I was going to do this, I would come down here and tape these pieces in place at the very end, and then have everything floating like that. And I learned this from watching Robert Benedetto, but he came in and he would put one between each finger and keep them separated like that right there. And then he would shoot his glue in there, and it was bizarre. But since this was taped, he would then just go zip. It's hard to do without that taped in place, but he would just go zip, and he would do an enormous run, and I think that's a five piece right there. And then he'd put some tape right there where my left hand is. He'd do his masking tape and he'd push it down, and then he'd open it up again, shoot the glue in there, push it down up to this point. You wouldn't want to go on because you got to get some tape on it. So you'd have to get some tape on it right here, and then shoot the glue in there, pull that, put some tape there, put some tape there, put some tape there. And sorry for the idiocy. This is hard to hold. And then carry it on up, and then you determine this is where the men get separated from the boys, and this is where it will send you over the deep end. There is nothing more difficult than building or binding a Les Paul Custom horn. The horn on the Les Paul Custom, you can pull that off. You can pull off anything, and I've done it a few times. It's tough. It's beautiful. It's really hard to do, but where I'm going with this binding up here, this is a very easy binding job. Very simple, because this curve right here, you basically do like you take like a 4-inch circle, and you bind around that 4-inch circle, and you let that dry. And then you take it off the circle, and then you take your razor knife and you cut it, and you just let this run long up here, right up kissing the fretboard, because once your fretboard goes in, then you're going to take your flush cut saw and you're going to cut your bevel right there. Okay, and then you'll do your miter work up here. So very nice, clean, simple lines to run, even though it's multi-piece. It gets fairly tricky up here, but the way Robert Benedetto did it is he started in the middle and did the little mustache first, because his headstock profile is very similar to the Les Paul or the Gibson, but it was much more pronounced, and he would do the glue work on this and hold it in place and let it dry. Then he'd come back the next day and do that part right there. Okay, so if you're interested in doing it, don't ask me, but just go online, look at some of the videos. It's doable, but just know that it'll cost you about $150, which is about $20 more than what this overlay would cost you. Okay, so I'm going to end the video right there, and appreciate you. Let me check the time. 43 minutes. That's actually still not bad. I'm glad we're under an hour, because I almost didn't talk about the whole hybrid thing, but because I had mentioned it on the side briefly throughout the first video or two, I wanted you guys to see how simple it would be to just put this in any type of body that you wanted, and it doesn't have to go in, or used as just a replacement neck. But I will say this: what's in front of us right there is an enormous amount of machine work that's already done, is already finished. Whether you paint it black, jet black, nitro on the back, and then just glue that overlay down, that would be a rocket fast way of finishing this project. So that's really what it was intended for. And as I clarified, I'm not going to say it again, but once it ships, it's your project, and you do whatever it is you want with it. But visit that video series if you want to really get into going from paper, and design your whole neck on paper first. See, there's the pitch even. So I even got the pitch. There's the 4-degree pitch right there. 1950s versus 1975 to 1982. There's the 11th fret. Here's the here's the first fret location. There's the end of the fretboard. There's the beginning of the pitch. Everything that we've already covered. See how it tapers out here. This is 5/16 of an inch longer for a custom versus a burst. See what I was talking about, how this flares out and gets thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker, but it flows into that first fret location, which is very thin. So when you look, if you were to look at these boards just like this right here, and that's nowhere near machine down, it would be about another eighth of an inch thinner than that. So engineer it on paper first. Make certain that you make all your mistakes on paper before you pull out your Honduran mahogany or your bird's eye maple and start cutting into it. And I always recommend, if you've never built one before, get some scrap, or not scrap, but just go to your local big box and buy some poplar, POPLAR, like the wood, not popular, but poplar wood, the greenish gray wood. It's really affordable. It's easy to machine. Build a mock-up neck, and then learn how to do everything, and then turn that into a clock or either an ornament for your shop. But once you do get to this point right here, now you can go. I'll cover this briefly just because we're only about 43 minutes in. Then you can go to your local Woodcraft or your local big box. I say big box. Your big box is not going to have any exotic wood because I don't even think they carry maple. Because if you're building a guitar neck, it's either going to need to be a mahogany or it's going to need to be a maple. And basically, that's how I build my necks if I'm doing a jazz neck. And then this can come down like this. And according to how long your board is, will determine just how close you can get right there. See how I'm very close to the end. And if there was a knot or some sort of imperfection, then you make the determination of how to hide things or work around them. But and I'll hit this briefly. If you get your S4S board from a professional uh, luthier type supply house, that their wood is kiln drying S4S. It's perfectly square and true. You can actually use their finished surface here and their finished surface there for the top of your neck. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm almost 100% certain. Yeah, I am. I do, because I remember discussing it in the video. When I ordered this maple from my vendor, that surface right there was machined at his shop. Okay, does that make sense? One was right here, and one was right here. I think that's the way it was. Yeah. And so, on that note, you are actually taking advantage of the fact that you don't have to spend $2,000 on a shaper or or any sort of surfacing machinery. You can rely on that right there to get you started, get you in the game. Because everything that you're doing over here, you could do that with an extremely high quality jigsaw. I use a bandsaw sometimes, but for the most part, man, my little DeWalt jigsaw, it's phenomenal. And I can stop, I can watch things, I can get in little corners like that on the board because I might literally be um, getting another neck right here. I'm the world's worst at cutting things really close. So I'll stop talking about that. But nonetheless, when you have these little paper templates that you've drawn and cut out, then you can go to like your local Woodcraft or your local cabinet shop, cabinet builders in your hometown, which most even middle class hometowns have a really nice cabinet builder. They're gonna have a really nice maple in stock, and sometimes exotic woods. And one thing a nice cabinet shop has is phenomenal machinery, and sometimes you can get them to do things for you to help get you started, and then you take it from there. So anyway, I appreciate you guys checking in. I'm just going to end the video because if I continue to talk about net construction, it'll just go way off out into left field, and it will be a grave injustice to you. The only thing I will say that I do need to cover this because we're probably not too terribly deep into it. Let me pause briefly. Okay, we'll be able to finish up here fairly soon. I've already covered that enough, and you're aware of the video series where to locate that, and I showed you how you would build a neck like that. a multi-piece neck. In other words, like a 3-piece neck or a 2-piece neck, according to how thick your stock is. But if you're building out of something like this right here, see, this is Honduran mahogany, quarter sawn, and some of the most beautiful quarter sawn I've seen in a long time. This is a beautiful, beautiful board. Now, I'll do tap tone stuff later on because I can't. It's so big I can't hold. I need to hold it out here. But this neck came out of. Okay, let me show you these numbers first. See, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see the 2, 3, 4? Well, it was like this right here. You see the A1, A1, B3, C5. It's just my notation, A, B, B. And then I know that if I pick this board up 6 months later and I pick this remnant up later on, I know exactly where this came out of this board, because what this is like that right there. Okay, so that's where that neck came from, a 1-piece wide neck. But I did not need to cut that 1-piece neck right out of the middle of that. And what I did was, before the very first machine work that I did, see how it's got the ears glued on it? The very first machine work that I did was I sawed that material off and left this 2 1/4 inch width, which this ended up being 2 3/16 of an inch. So you see how close I took it straight up to the finish line. Knowing me, I probably took it to 2 3/16. I'm really bad about stuff like that. No, I didn't, believe it or not. I went to just under 2 1/4. Why? Because I can use this as for a whole lot of different things. That's an enormous amount of wood. Hope that makes sense. That was just like that right there, because I've had 2 boards this size right here. I think that's 3 by 4, and I can get 3 necks. I can get 3 necks out of that right there. 2 will be beautiful, and there's 1 right here in the middle that would have to get an extension on the front. So that's one that I would build for myself on some sort of project guitar. So just think about the cross section. Just, look at how could one neck be upside down, one could be in the middle, or take advantage of that top surface there, that top surface there. I guarantee you that surface that you're looking at right there was what was shipped to me. Okay, one, because this was probably S4S'd on a machine that's $30,000 to $50,000, and it's perfectly just true. I wish I could see if I can find the node. That's Honduran mahogany, and that's why everybody wants a Les Paul. All right. So I appreciate you guys checking in. Try to get the table organized here. Got a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but probably a fairly good video, especially for the project builders, and because that's some great information, just general. And I hope I covered enough related to this particular neck that it was beneficial for whomever might be buying it, is what I'm saying. So appreciate you guys checking in. I'll see you in the next video.